They wanted someone younger. So I showed them what experience can do. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. I wasn't thrilled to be training a 29-year-old man with a TikTok beard and startup shoes when I was 45, overworked, and keeping a job mainly because I had a mortgage, a teenager who liked eating daily, and no trust fund to fall back on. But hey, this is America. And in America, experience only counts if it comes in a hoodie with a podcast. My name's Trina. Single mom. Midwest. 23 years in project management. I started when Excel still looked like Minecraft. I've worked under screaming VPs, broken printers with post-it stuck in their soul, and survived 3 company-wide restructurings that felt more like biblical plagues than strategy. At the time this started, I worked at a mid-sized software firm outside Minneapolis. We made boring stuff, workflow dashboards, supply chain APIs, the kind of SaaS that only excites LinkedIn influencers and procurement goblins. But it was stable. I had built systems. People came to me to solve things. I had a process for everything. Onboarding, sprint planning, even what kind of muffins to get for client visits depending on their sector. Don't ask. Industrial clients love banana nut. And then Eli showed up. Eli with his growth mindset, and 2 months of consulting experience and a confidence level so high I wondered if he'd been homeschooled by a TED Talk. I was told to train him into my role, because I was so good at knowledge sharing. That was red flag number 1. When they praise your generosity instead of your results, you're being positioned for a shove. Still, I did it. I made him cheat sheets, showed him how to handle our largest client, taught him how to not write in Comic Sans during demos. Yes, really. I even let him shadow meetings. He nodded a lot, took credit even faster. 2 months in, I overheard him in the hallway telling the director of ops my solution for streamlining deployment as something he was testing out. I let it slide. I was tired. HR was useless. And I had a 16-year-old daughter who needed braces and a Corolla with a heart murmur. I couldn't afford to raise a fuss. Until the week the promotion was announced. My boss, John, whose main qualifications were being tall and married to the VP's cousin, called me into his office like we were about to discuss a team lunch. I want to thank you, Trina, he said, for being so collaborative with Eli. He's really flourished under your guidance. Cue tight smile from me. Then he said it. We've decided to move forward with Eli as senior PM. We think he brings a fresh perspective. But we're counting on you to help support the transition. You're still a vital part of the team. I felt my stomach drop like an elevator with the cord cut. Vital. Support. The words they use before they offer you a mentoring role with no raise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded, walked out, went into the women's restroom, and dry heaved into a paper towel. My mascara held. Barely. Then I went home. Hugged my daughter. Ate 4 slices of leftover pizza in the dark. And decided they would regret this. I didn't know how. Not yet. But I've spent 2 decades building systems that don't break under pressure. And this? This was just another broken system to fix. I started collecting receipts. Emails. Slack threads. Meeting notes. Screenshots of my work that Eli had borrowed. Voice memos where he misrepresented metrics to the sales team. He thought I was just some burned-out old lady with a coffee habit and a dusty resume. He had no idea I had version control on everything. Meanwhile, I updated my LinkedIn. I didn't blast anything public. I just quietly started applying to places. Places that respected senior women. Places where I wouldn't have to smile through another bro telling me to lean in. Within 2 months, I landed a job at a startup in Chicago. Better pay. Fully remote. A female founder who actually read my portfolio before the interview. I gave my notice. No drama. Just, I've accepted a new opportunity. They all acted surprised. Eli patted my shoulder and said, "We'll try to keep things running smoothly without you." And I smiled. Really smiled. Because I had already sent an anonymous tip to the internal audit team. And the folder? It wasn't empty. Leaving that job felt like slipping off a wet, itchy sweater that used to be your favorite until someone spilled Axe body spray on it and never apologized. My last day, no one made a big fuss. No cake. No speech. A few polite "you'll be missed" messages in Slack. Eli posted a folded hands emoji and said, "Couldn't have grown without your guidance." The kind of thing a man says after he's stolen your seat and expects you to thank him for warming it. I didn't engage. Because by then I had already moved on to a startup in Chicago that actually understood what experience meant. Fully remote. Healthy boundaries. No creepy passive-aggressive emails at 9:17 p.m. asking if I had 5 minutes to align. But even with my new gig, I couldn't stop thinking about what they let happen. About Eli's smirk. About John using the phrase fresh energy like it was code for you're too old and we can't legally say it. So I started checking the system I left behind. Not directly. No need to be suspicious. Just watching. Their quarterly review was coming up, and I knew that Eli didn't understand half the infrastructure I trained him on. He was a bullet point guy. He'd absorbed the headlines and none of the substance. I kept tabs through public project logs, updates sent to clients. They didn't think to lock those down. And one very talkative former intern named Jenna who still thought I walked on water because I once defended her from being mansplained into tears during a kickoff call. According to Jenna, the team was 2 weeks behind on every milestone. Eli had restructured the project dashboard for visibility and broke 3 automations in the process. The biggest client, who I had nurtured like a temperamental plant for 4 years, had started CCing higher-ups with questions that sounded a lot like threats. Still, no one was saying anything out loud. That's when I remembered compliance. Every year, we had to file reports, security protocols, access audits, communication standards. Most of it was bureaucratic sludge, but important sludge. And I was the only one who really understood the process. Before I left, I'd documented every time Eli skipped a step or delegated something he was supposed to do. I had timestamped Slack messages, drafts I had to rewrite under his name, and an entire folder called Audit Prep, if they screw me, that I'd left untouched, until now. I logged into the anonymous tip line used for internal ethics and compliance concerns. Every company has one these days, required by law in most industries. And I submitted a package. No names. Just documents. Timestamps. A trail of inconsistencies. And a very specific note. Might want to review Q1 compliance protocols, especially around system access controls. There's a lot here that doesn't match the sign-offs. I hit send. Then I went back to work. Because here's the beauty of receipts, they don't scream. They whisper. And if you whisper long enough in the right ears, people start to listen. 3 weeks later, I got a message from Jenna. Did you hear? Eli's on leave. Not sure if it's health or scandal, but things are tense. I didn't reply. Just sipped my coffee and updated my tracking sheet labeled Dominoes. A few days later, a recruiter from my old company messaged me on LinkedIn. Hi Trina. Big fan of your work here. We're undergoing some leadership shifts and wondered if you'd ever consider returning, maybe at a higher level. I left it unread. Because the best part of a plan well executed is letting them chase you after they told you to move aside. There's a strange, almost erotic satisfaction in watching a man panic professionally. You know that look? The one where his jaw's too tight, he's suddenly overusing business jargon like it's Kevlar, and every email is marked urgent, but still says, hey, just circling back, smiley face. That was Eli. I wasn't there, but Jenna was. And she had become my personal field reporter, unpaid, unasked, but gleefully committed. She sent me updates like gossip texts during the Super Bowl. He's relogging time entries from last month, backdating shit. You think audit flagged him? CEO just called a closed-door meeting with HR. Eli looked like someone canceled brunch. Confirmed, he tried to blame the intern for the missing compliance logs. But I saw his Slack from March. He told me to just skip the audit prep, it's all performative anyway. I've got screenshots. Want them? I did. Not because I needed more evidence, but because I was building a war chest. You see, I didn't just want him gone. I wanted them to know exactly what they'd thrown away. Let's rewind a bit. That message from the recruiter? The one asking if I'd consider returning in a leadership capacity? I finally replied. Casually. 2 days later. Thanks for reaching out. I'm open to chatting. I'm really happy where I am, but I'd love to hear what you're envisioning. They responded within 45 minutes. We set up a call. The VP of strategy joined. Not John, thank God. He'd apparently stepped down, which I translated to, asked to resign before a compliance scandal dragged him under like a drunk uncle in a baptismal pool. The VP was professional, overly complimentary, and nervous. She said they were reassessing culture. That they wanted to correct mistakes. That they realized, in hindsight, I'd been foundational. That word again. Foundational. Funny how no one remembers foundations until the house is on fire. I ask questions. Specific ones. What team would I be leading? What authority would I have over hiring, budget, operations? Would I be replacing someone? Or would the role be newly created? There was a pause. Then, you'd be stepping into the position that was most recently held by Eli. Oh. I smiled so hard I nearly cracked my molar. I told her I'd think about it. And I did. For 3 weeks. During that time, I got a bouquet of peonies delivered to my home with no card. I knew it was from them. No one else in my life sends strategic florals. They followed up with a formal offer. $20,000 above what I made when I left. Full benefits. Remote optional. Signing bonus. Leadership development budget. I countered. $35,000 above. Plus 10% equity. And the authority to restructure the team. They accepted within 24 hours. When I logged back into the company portal, my title read, Director of Strategic Operations. I printed it out and taped it to my fridge. My daughter, who is 17 now, wiser than I'll ever be, looked at me and said, "Are you happy or just right?" And I said, "Both." But one came first. I didn't make a dramatic entrance. No slow clap. No surprise boardroom appearance. I wasn't there for theatrics, I was there for impact. Still, the day I logged in again, same Slack workspace, new title, was the closest I've ever come to understanding why movie villains monologue. There's just something delicious about being underestimated, discarded, and then invited back with a pay raise and power. And everyone knew. Not officially, of course. No one said, "Oh hey, the woman we let get professionally mugged is back." But the whispers started immediately. Jenna told me Eli's desk had been scrubbed clean. His name was removed from the org chart like it had never been there. When I joined my first leadership sync, the tension was beautiful. Half the people smiled too hard. The other half avoided eye contact like I was a ghost they still owed money. I kept my tone calm, professional. But make no mistake, I led that meeting like a surgeon. I asked about the audit process. I requested documentation on the Q1 compliance slip. I asked who had authorized skipping my original quarterly plan review. Everyone knew who, but no one said his name. Not out loud. I didn't need them to. I had his sins in a Google Drive. That week I cleaned house. Not vengefully. Strategically. There were 3 major hires Eli had pushed through, friends of his from his college incubator group. 2 of them had job titles with no clear responsibilities. One had never submitted a single quarterly report. I reassigned all of them, gave them 30 days to prove value or get out. The team exhaled. You could feel it. Apparently, I wasn't the only one exhausted by men who failed upward. And then, on Thursday afternoon, 4 days into my return, I got an email. From Eli. Subject line. No hard feelings? It read, "Hey Trina. Crazy week, huh? I guess they made their decision. Just wanted to say, hope we can be cool. I know things got political. Anyway, let me know if you ever want to grab coffee. Eli." I stared at the screen. And then slowly I opened my audit receipts folder and dropped in a fresh screenshot. Because this email was a gift. Proof he still didn't understand what he did. He hadn't just taken a role that wasn't his. He'd cashed checks in my name. He'd made my labor invisible, then smiled while HR handed him a title. And now he wanted coffee. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to HR. For the record, inappropriate contact post-investigation. Recommend no further outreach. That was the last I ever heard from Eli. Unless you count the whisper I heard in the elevator 2 weeks later. "Did you hear Eli's trying to freelance now? Heard someone flagged him in the interview background check." Oh, sweet consequences. Meanwhile, I rebuilt the system. Trained new hires. Reinstated mentoring programs for women. Implemented an internal tracker that gave real credit where it was due. Even pushed for transparency and performance evaluations. When I presented the new strategy to the board, one of the older execs leaned in and said, "You're running this place like it's a machine." I said, "No, machines can be replaced. I'm running it like a legacy." A month into my new position, everything started running smoother. Morale was up. Dead weight had been cleared. The Slack channels stopped reading like war zones. Someone even started a hashtag Trina Wisdom Quotes thread after I said, "Don't confuse movement with progress unless you're a Roomba." But systems only run well until a new crack forms. And this one came in the form of Kim. Kim was new. Early 30s. Smart. Detail-oriented. The kind of woman who'd send you a Google sheet with 17 color-coded tabs and apologize for going overboard. She'd been hired by Eli, but buried under his chaos. I only noticed her during a team huddle where she gently corrected a reporting metric and got steamrolled by two louder men before I could unmute myself. After the meeting, I messaged her. "Hey, your data was spot on. Let's talk about your visibility here." We had a one-on-one. She almost cried. I was told to be more agreeable. I didn't want to seem like I was stirring things up. Sound familiar? Too familiar. She was me. Me 10 years ago. Me 5 months ago. Me in every room where I had to smile while someone with less skill and more swagger got applause for something I fixed. So I made her project lead on our next big implementation. She resisted at first, said she wasn't senior enough. I told her the truth. Seniority isn't a title. It's how many times you've held the weight while someone else took the credit. I mentored her. Gave her backup in meetings. Made sure she was invited into conversations, not just afterthought emails. When she presented her plan to the execs, one of them said, "Did you just reorganize the entire CRM logic tree?" She nodded. Yes. The previous system was duplicative and unscalable. They asked who taught her that. She looked right at me and smiled. That's when I realized. This was the revenge. Not the job. Not the title. Not even Eli's slow, delicious unraveling. It was this. Helping women who were where I'd been. Kim wasn't the only one. I pulled others in. Quietly. Deliberately. Created a mentorship circle inside operations and called it Cross-Training Thursdays. Gave people stretch projects. Taught them how to document their wins. How to build proof. How to be unfireable. My daughter noticed. "You're less grumpy lately," she said one night over spaghetti. "I'm not grumpy," I replied. "I'm in recovery." "From what?" "Letting the wrong people decide what I'm worth." She nodded. "Sounds exhausting." It was. But now I'm the one holding the calculator. She grinned. "Good. Maybe you'll finally get me that prom dress." We laughed. I promised to consider sequence. 6 months after I took the director role, I got asked to speak at a leadership summit. One of those internal women in tech conferences where they slap your face on a flyer with an inspiring quote, and you spend the first 10 minutes wondering if anyone will actually show up. I said yes. Not because I like public speaking, I don't, but because I knew the topic. Making space. Turning silence into strategy. They gave me 20 minutes and a stage the size of a small studio apartment. I walked out in a dark blazer, hair pulled back, no slides. Just notes in my hand and the look of someone who knew how to survive a burning building because she grew up in one. I started with this. I was replaced by someone younger, louder, and less qualified. He called it growth. The company called it innovation. I called it theft. The room went still. Then I told them the truth. How I trained my replacement. How I documented every slight. How I quietly built a folder that could sink a ship. How I left. Then rebuilt. Then returned. How I fired him without raising my voice once. And then I said, "This isn't just a revenge story. This is a manual." Because every woman in this room has been asked to support the man who's stepping on her back. Some people clapped. Some just stared stunned. Like I'd said something they'd never heard out loud, but felt in their bones every Monday morning. I told them about Kim. About mentorship. About tracking wins like invoices. About never deleting emails. About not waiting for permission to document injustice. Then I ended with this. You don't have to torch the system to change it. But you do have to stop treating survival like success. You deserve more than endurance. You deserve credit. And if they won't give it to you, you take it. Like a woman who knows she's the smartest person in the room. Standing ovation. I barely remember walking off stage. What I do remember is the woman who found me in the hallway afterward. Mid-50s. Red blazer. Eyes shining. She said, "You just described my last 15 years. And I didn't even realize I was angry until you said it." I hugged her. Not because I'm sentimental. but because that was the real victory. Eli. Gone. The people who underestimated me now work under me. But this? Women waking up to the idea that they don't owe anyone their silence? That's my legacy. Epilogue. 6 months later, I launched an internal academy at the company. We call it the Receipt Room. It's a mentorship program for women by women. We teach you how to track your value, write your own performance review, push back without apology, build your escape plan, or your takeover plan. I teach the first class every quarter. My daughter made the logo. It's a little flaming folder. She said, "It's like you but with Wi-Fi." She's not wrong. They thought they were handing me a demotion when they gave that boy my job. But I took that insult and turned it into a blueprint. And now, every time a woman walks out of my training with a smirk and a plan, I know that promotion he stole was just the fire I needed to start my own revolution. ***.